Hello everyone and welcome back to another Flask tutorial. So in this video what I'm going to be doing is showing you something called template inheritance, which is an extremely useful tool so you're not repeating HTML code or JavaScript or whatever it's going to be throughout your entire website. It essentially allows you to create kind of a base template that every other one of your templates will work off of, and we'll talk about that. I'm also going to be showing you how we can add Bootstrap to our website and just create a basic little nav bar. I just want to show you guys really, simply how you can actually make your website look good. And then that way you guys can kind of go after this video, change some things up and understand how to actually style your website, because throughout most of these videos, I'm not really going to be talking about front-end development. Most of it's going to be functionality, back-end, talking about user authentication, forms, all those kind of things. And I just want to give you guys an idea of how you can actually make a decent front end without having to use some frameworks like React or, Angular or stuff like that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, I just want to give you a basic example of what I mean by template inheritance. Now, if we look at, the Bootstrap website, which we're going to be using later in the video, we can see here that this website kind of has a theme. And we can kind of detect that theme by this nav bar up here that's, a specific color. It has some things on it. And we know that when we click items on the nav bar, depending on what we click, obviously, we're probably going to be directed to a page that looks similar with just slightly different content. Now, it wouldn't really make sense for Bootstrap or for any of these websites to keep writing the code to generate this nav bar on every single web page that they have, because this is kind of something that's set. It's going to stay the same for most of the pages. And in fact, there's probably some more other similar things, like maybe, the footer at the bottom of the website. Well, I guess it doesn't have one, so I can't show you, that are going to stay the same. So what should we do to, accomplish not having to repeat this code? Well, Flask at least makes this really easy because we can actually inherit templates. Now, what I'm going to do to illustrate this is just create a new template. So I'm just going to create a new file. I'm going to save this as base.html, and this is going to represent the base template, or kind of the base theme of my website. It's going to store all of the HTML code that will persist throughout most or the entire website. Now in here, I'm actually just going to copy all the HTML from index.html and put it directly inside here. Now I'm going to delete this from index.html and we'll start working with a few things here. So since this is our base template, that means that we are not actually going to ever render this template. We're always just going to use this as something that, the child templates, which will be, for example, index.html, will inherit from. And if you're unfamiliar with inheritance, that essentially means, use everything and then change a few small things or overwrite some functionality of, the parent, which in this case is going to be the base.html. So the way that we can allow our child templates to change specific functionality of the base template is by adding something called blocks. Now you guys will understand this more as we get through, but just follow along for now. What I'm going to do is just create something called block, and I'm going to put it inside the same tags we used before to write, for loops and if statements inside our HTML code. I'm going to give this block a name by just typing the name directly after block. And then what I'm going to do is simply end the block by typing end block. So very similar syntax to what we've seen before. Now what this does is essentially say, okay, we're going to define a block. We're going to call it content. And this block, we will allow the child template to give us some content that we will fill in. So essentially what I can do now is I can go to this child template. I can inherit base.html, I can create this block, and then I can tell, this block what content I want, and then it will actually substitute it inside here for title, and it will use that title when we render the template. So rather than talking about it, let's actually do it. So to extend a template, what we need to do at the very top of our template is type extends, not in all capitals, like this. And then in quotation marks, the name of that template. So in this case, it's going to be base.html. And it's important that these templates are in the same directory so that they can actually see each other. If they're not, then you'd have to do, like folder/base.html if that's inside an interior folder. Okay, so we're going to extend base.html. And now what I'm going to do is actually give some content for that block content. So this is the exact same as what we had in our base template, except this time I'm actually going to put some stuff in between these kind of blocks. So I'm going to say end block like that. So block content, end block. And then inside here, I'm actually just going to put homepage. Now what this is going to do is very similar, just kind of like an HTML tag, where this homepage now will be replaced with whatever this block content is, and that will actually show now for us inside title. So very useful, and can definitely save us a lot of time. Now what I'm going to do is get rid of this content here, and I'm actually just going to put something that just says, Tim's website, and this h1 tag I'm assuming is going to be shown on every single page no matter what. So we'll leave that there as the h1 tag. But what I want to do is create another block, and I'm going to call this, and I've called this block content. Sorry, I want to call this block title. My apologies, guys, because I actually want to call my next block content. So we'll change the name of that. And then what I'm going to do is define another block. I'm going to call it block content, which will represent, in our case, the content of the website or the content of the web page. So I'll do, actually, I don't know why I copied that. And then we'll type end block. And now what I've done is define another block that we can, overwrite. We can put some information into. So now from our child template, we'll write this block again. So we have block content, and then we will simply end the block. And now in between these two tags, I can put any HTML code I want, and that will actually be rendered to my base.html template whenever, we have that popping up. So let's do another h1 tag, and we'll just say, test like that, and we'll leave it at that for now. Okay, so let's go back to our actual Python code now. This is the exact same that I had in the last video, so if you haven't seen that, then you can check that out. And quick side note, I will be putting most of this code on my website, and there will be links in the description to that. I'm going to make one minor change to this because someone did leave a comment, and this is definitely going to be helpful for all of us. In this app.run, we can actually define something called debug equals true. So just a keyword argument here. And what this is actually going to do is allow us to not have to rerun the server every time we make a change, because it will automatically be detecting those changes and updating the website for us. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to make sure I save that. And then what I'm going to do is run Python tutorial 3. You'll notice we get a few more kind of debug things popping up for us. And then what I'm going to do is just grab this URL. We'll go to a new web browser window, open that up, and there you go. We can see we get Tim's website and we get test. So that is kind of exactly what I wanted to, show you guys. That's how that works. We're extending this base template. We're adding our own, test to that base template by putting that in the block content. And that is pretty much how this works. Now you might be like, well, this is kind of, useless right now because all we're doing is just showing an h1 tag rather than doing all this extra work. Why wouldn't I just, take this h1